wind howled through the empty streets of New Orleans like the screams of lost souls. Rain pounded the windshield of Ethan Caldwell's SUV in relentless sheets, blurring the world into a watercolor of chaos. The wipers fought desperately, but they were no match for the fury of the storm. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating his tense face, a man who once commanded courtrooms with ease, now grappling with something he couldn't control: time. Ethan was a renowned attorney, cold, calculating, and undefeated, but tonight none of that mattered. Tonight, he was just a desperate son, racing through a storm to reach his father's bedside before it was too late. "Please, hold on, Dad. Just a little longer," he whispered through clenched teeth, white-knuckled hands gripping the wheel like a lifeline. The call had come exactly 29 minutes ago, a nurse's trembling voice saying that Charles Caldwell had been rushed to Metro General after a massive heart attack. "Maybe an hour," the doctor had said bluntly. A thunderclap cracked the sky. Ethan pressed the accelerator harder, his luxury SUV pushing through the flood-swollen road like a ship in a maelstrom. He knew this was reckless, borderline suicidal, but what terrified him more than death was being too late. Too late to say sorry, too late to say he loved him, too late to break the wall of silence they had built for years. Images of his father flashed in his mind, stern, distant, yet still the man who taught him to tie a tie, to stand tall when hurt. Ethan had chosen power, wealth, and court victories over Sunday dinners and family birthdays. Now, every past decision felt like a blade, slicing back into his soul. His phone buzzed again. Metro General, missed call. His heart twisted violently. With shaking hands, he reached for the phone. For one fatal heartbeat, his eyes left the road. And that's when he saw it. A deer, frozen, glowing in the headlights like a ghost from another world. Screeching tires, screaming metal, glass exploding. The world spun into fire and fury. And then, silence. The storm still raged, but Ethan heard nothing, felt nothing. The last image in his fading mind was his father's face, not angry, just waiting. Waiting for the son who never arrived. Naomi Brooks stepped through ankle-deep puddles as if crossing her own miniature ocean. Her thin jacket was soaked through, her worn-out sneakers squelched with every determined stride. The storm howled around her, fierce and merciless, as if daring her to give up. But Naomi kept walking. She had no other choice. The last bus had broken down. She'd just finished another graveyard shift at the community health clinic, where she worked both as a janitor and a part-time medical aide while studying for her night nursing certification. There was no one to call, no spare cash for a cab. Home was still 5 miles away. "We're never given more than we can bear," she whispered to the wind. "But Lord, I'm running low tonight." She tilted her face skyward, letting rain mingle with tears. At 27, Naomi had already lost more than most people ever would. Her mother had died of cancer when she was just a teenager. Her grandmother, who raised her with fierce love, had passed away just last month. Marissa, her best friend, had been her last anchor. And now Marissa was gone too, leaving behind triplets that Naomi had sworn to care for as her own. She didn't have the luxury of falling apart. A flash of lightning lit the roadside, and something shimmered at the edge of the embankment. Mud, metal, movement. Naomi froze. An SUV lay crumpled at the base of a hill, smashed against an ancient oak. Steam hissed from its ruined hood. The acrid scent of burning oil and twisted metal filled the air. She didn't hesitate. Slipping and stumbling, Naomi scrambled down the muddy slope, scraping her knees, clutching tufts of wet grass to stay upright. "Hello, is anyone inside?" she shouted, pressing her hand to the cracked driver's window. Inside was a man unconscious, bleeding from a deep gash across his temple. But what made Naomi catch her breath wasn't the blood. It was his expression. Peaceful, as if dreaming, or surrendering. "Not today, not on my watch." The driver's door was jammed, but the passenger side had flung open from the impact. Naomi climbed in, kneeling beside him, ripping strips from her own shirt to create makeshift bandages. "Can you hear me?" she whispered, placing her hand gently on his chest. "You're not dying. I won't let you." His fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. Then they opened. Deep ocean blue, haunted, breathtaking. "Angel," he croaked, voice thin and broken. Naomi's throat tightened. "No, sugar, just someone passing by when God needed me to stop." A pause. A fragile breath. "What's your name?" he asked. "Naomi," she answered, still pressing firmly against his wound. "Naomi," he repeated, like a vow. "I'm Ethan. I was trying to get to my father before—" "Shh. Don't talk. Conserve your strength. I'm here now." Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed through the storm. Naomi held his hand tight, murmuring prayers under her breath. She didn't know why fate placed her there that night, but her soul understood this much. She wasn't sent to witness a death. She was sent to deliver life. Ethan awoke to a haze of white. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled his lungs, making his stomach churn. Everything was blurred, like a half-remembered nightmare. A white ceiling, the beep of a heart monitor, an IV line taped to his arm. His throat felt like sandpaper. He was alive. But the first thought wasn't about himself, it was about his father. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body like barbed wire tightening around his ribs. A nurse rushed to his side, gently pressing him back down. "Mr. Caldwell, please, take it easy. You've been through a serious accident. You've been unconscious for 2 days." 2 days? His voice was dry, barely audible. "My father, where is he?" The nurse looked away for a moment, then softly answered, "I'm so sorry. Mr. Charles passed away that same night. We tried to reach you, but—" Ethan's heart pounded in his ears. He closed his eyes, not from the physical pain, but from the deep, numbing cold that swept through his chest. He was too late. Too late to apologize. Too late to look his father in the eye and say, "I love you." Too late to show that even after all the walls and silence, he still wanted to make things right. For years, Ethan had chosen ambition over family. Big clients, high-profile cases, awards lining his office walls. He'd become a legend in courtrooms. But it had cost him every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner he'd missed. "I'll call later. I'm in a meeting." "Don't worry, Dad. I'm fine." Empty words, postponed promises, and now, no second chance. Death doesn't wait. It doesn't pause for apologies. And then, her face. Even through the chaos of the crash, he remembered. The woman who bent over him in the storm, her steady hands, her voice cutting through the noise. Naomi. She wasn't wearing a lab coat. She wasn't a doctor. But her eyes, God, her eyes, were fierce with resolve, lit with something brighter than the headlights. She didn't abandon him, not when everything seemed lost. Ethan turned his head toward the hospital window, where the last traces of rain clung to the glass and weak sunlight tried to break through. And in that fragile light, something stirred in him, something he hadn't felt in years. Not ambition, not pride, but gratitude. And more than that, a quiet vow growing stronger by the second. He had to find her. Ethan gripped the hospital blanket across his lap, heart heavy with a guilt he couldn't yet name. He didn't know who she was, or why she appeared in that exact moment, but one thing was certain. He was alive. Because of her. And somewhere else in the same city, as Ethan began to remember her face, Naomi, the woman in the rain, was walking her own path, a path laced with quiet grief and unseen battles. A path that, though he didn't know it yet, would one day become part of his forever. Naomi's apartment barely spanned 400 square feet, tucked into the third floor of an aging building where every stair groaned beneath each step. But inside, it was a world of love, a fragile haven where 3 little voices called her Mama, though none of them shared her blood. Hope, Faith, and Elijah, the triplets she took in after Marissa, Her dearest friend died suddenly in a car accident just a few months after Ethan's crash. Marissa had been the last constant in Naomi's life, the one person who never left, who always believed in her. When she died, Naomi didn't hesitate. Though broke, though never a mother before, she scooped up the 15-month-old babies and held them like they were all she had left of the world. Each morning, Naomi rose at 5 a.m. She changed diapers, mixed formula, cooked breakfast, and walked the children to a low-cost daycare before starting her shift. At night, she carried them home, bathed them, sang lullabies once whispered by her grandmother, and after they drifted off to sleep, she opened her beat-up laptop and studied for hours, determined not to quit her nursing classes. The fridge was often empty. She learned to stretch flour and cheap greens into meals. Some days, all they had was toasted bread dipped in milk, but she never complained. The apartment echoed with laughter, tiny feet running, little voices shouting, "Mama!" with joy. Neighbors gossiped. Some called her crazy. Others accused her of doing it for attention or sympathy. But Naomi didn't care. As long as her babies called her Mama, she could endure anything. She still believed in hope. One night, Elijah burned with fever. Naomi had no money left for medicine. She sat by his bed, cradling him in trembling arms, her eyes red from exhaustion and fear. And she prayed, like her mother used to, like her grandmother had. "Please, take it out on me instead. Just let them be okay. I'll carry the rest." The next morning, his fever broke like a miracle. Naomi held him tight and whispered through tears, "Thank you. Thank you for letting me keep them one more day." What she didn't know was that just a few blocks away, a man, Ethan Caldwell, was quietly watching her life unfold from afar through private investigator reports and grainy photos. And each time he saw her, thinner, wearier, but still holding those children, still smiling, something in his chest twisted. Naomi didn't know she had saved his life once, but Ethan knew something with unwavering certainty. Now it was his turn to save hers. The rain had long stopped, but inside Ethan, a storm still raged. Quiet, persistent, and unrelenting. He'd tried to resume work after leaving the hospital, returned to his law office, sat in his high-backed leather chair, stared at 7-figure case files. But what once made him feel powerful now felt weightless, like dust on the surface of something hollow. Those eyes, that voice, those hands, the girl in the rain. Naomi, he whispered her name every night like a silent prayer. It wasn't just gratitude, it was a longing he couldn't explain. Ethan hired a private investigator, a man he had once used to track down elusive witnesses. But this time, it wasn't for victory in court. It was to find the woman who had saved his life. All he had was a name, Naomi, no last name, no address, no number. She's African American, late 20s maybe, was walking home along the I-10 during the storm, and she saved me. That was all he could say. Then he waited. 2 weeks later, an email arrived. Attached were grainy photographs taken from a distance, a young woman holding a baby, with 2 other small children clutching the hem of her coat. Naomi Brooks, the report read, resides in Town, janitorial staff at a community health center, caring for 3 children, biological relation unknown. Ethan zoomed in on the images. Every time he saw her weary smile, saw her cradling those kids in the middle of a crumbling neighborhood, something twisted inside him. She was alive, still strong, but he could also see she was fighting this battle alone. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had found her, the woman who had once pulled him from the storm, but he soon realized not all storms come from the sky. Some are quieter, crueler, waiting in silence to sweep Naomi and the children into a merciless spiral of judgment and lies. And this time, Ethan knew he couldn't just watch. He knew what he had to do. Naomi never imagined the first time she'd see Ethan again after nearly a year would be between a shelf of canned goods in the checkout lane. She was struggling with a wobbly grocery cart in a budget market, one hand trying to keep Elijah from wriggling out of the seat, the other wrangling Hope and Faith, who had no concept of staying still. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her mask hung half off, her old shirt clung to her skin. She didn't care what she looked like, she just needed to get milk, a few loaves of bread, some frozen vegetables, and the cheapest cold medicine she could find. Naomi counted every cent. It was the end of the month. Her janitorial paycheck had run dry. All that remained in her worn wallet was exactly $11.60. She laid her items on the counter, carefully setting the box of medicine at the very end. The cashier scanned. The total flashed, $17.82. She bit her lip. Embarrassment flushed hot in her chest. "I'm sorry. Can you put the medicine back?" she asked softly. "Maybe next time." Then came a voice, warm, familiar, deep. "Keep it. I've got it." Naomi turned, stunned. Her eyes widened like the air had frozen. "Ethan!" Those same ocean blue eyes, but softer now, calmer. He wore a simple gray button-up, no expensive suit, no tie, just a man with a basket of essentials, and a look on his face that said he hadn't forgotten. "You," she breathed, her voice caught between disbelief and something unspoken. "How did you find me?" Ethan smiled, something soft and sad in his eyes. "I never stopped looking. It's been almost a year." She stood, speechless, overwhelmed by a swirl of emotions: surprise, confusion, gratitude. Hope tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Mama, that man's really handsome." Ethan chuckled. "Hi, Hope. I'm Ethan." Naomi didn't quite know why she let him carry her groceries to the car, or why she didn't stop Faith from hugging his leg, or why Elijah reached out for his hand. Maybe it was the steadiness in his gaze. Maybe because, in that moment, she didn't feel so alone. But people in her neighborhood doesn't forget, and it certainly doesn't forgive. Within days, an older woman in Naomi's building, one who never missed a thing, reported to the property manager that Naomi had a strange man coming around in broad daylight. And just like that, the stories began. He's got a rich boyfriend. She's taking money to raise those kids. Or worse, she's selling herself. Naomi heard it all, every snide comment whispered in hallways, every narrowed glare. One woman even spat at the ground as Naomi walked past, Elijah on her hip. She said nothing, just clutched her children tighter. And then, on a Tuesday morning, as she was dressing the kids for daycare, came the knock. Firm, unapologetic. Standing in the doorway was a woman in a pressed shirt, holding a clipboard and an official ID. "Ms. Brooks, I'm with Child Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report regarding an unsafe environment and potentially inappropriate conduct around minors. We'll be conducting a home assessment." Naomi froze. They came in, looked through her cupboards, asked questions about her income, about her relationship to the children. One woman scribbled notes. As Faith cried and Elijah clung to Naomi's leg, Naomi kept her voice calm, her back straight. She answered everything truthfully. She had nothing to hide, but everything to lose. After they left, Naomi sank to the floor. Hope curled into her lap. "Mama, are they going to take us away?" Naomi shook her head, smiling through tears. "No one's taking you anywhere, baby, not ever." But that night, sleep did not come. She lay on the worn sofa with Elijah nestled against her chest, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. Helplessness pressed down like a stone on her ribs. She had already lost so much. Her mother, her grandmother, Marissa, but these three children, they were her world. She could not lose them too. And Ethan, the one person who could help, she didn't dare call him. Not because of pride, but because of fear. Fear that if he stepped in, the rumors would explode. Fear that she'd become someone clinging to a man for rescue, something she had promised herself she'd never be. So she did what she always did. She held her babies tight, whispered prayers into their hair, and prepared herself. If this was a fight, she would fight alone. And if she was going to lose everything, she'd lose it standing tall. Naomi sat motionless in the tiny kitchen after the children had fallen asleep. The dim light cast a soft glow on the cracked tile floor, outlining her thin frame, one that looked 10 years older than it had just months ago. It felt like everything was turning against her. She had tried to do everything right, never asked for favors, never begged for pity. She worked 2 jobs, studied late into the night, and poured every ounce of love and strength she had into raising 3 children that weren't even hers by blood, but were hers in every way that mattered. She had never taken a handout, never quit. And yet now, the very society she fought to believe in, the people who didn't know her, who had never stepped into her life, were judging her, accusing her, trying to strip away the only family she had left. Naomi buried her face in her hands as tears fell freely. In that moment, she didn't try to be strong. She wasn't a warrior or a martyr. She was just a young mother crumbling in the silence. Not from exhaustion, but from the deep, soul-crushing ache of feeling betrayed by a world she still tried to believe in. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered, barely audible, to God, or maybe just to the walls around her. Loneliness hit like a hammer. No hand to hold, no safe place to run, and for the first time in a long time, Naomi wondered if love alone was enough to keep a family together. She clenched her fists, wiped her face. She hadn't given up, but this time she knew she didn't have much left to fight with. Naomi sat still in the cold plastic chair at the child welfare office. Across the table sat 2 CPS representatives, one legal, one taking notes. She didn't look at anyone. Her hands clenched her shirt hem, trying to hide the trembling. Then the door opened. Ethan walked in. And behind him, a silver-haired woman, small in frame but firm in presence, her gaze clear and strong. Dorothy Winston, Ethan introduced. Marissa's aunt, biological relative to the children. The room fell silent. Dorothy sat beside Naomi and placed a thick folder on the table. Her voice was calm but commanding. "We have some things to clear up." Inside the folder were birth certificates of the children and a handwritten, notarized will from Marissa. In it, she wrote, "In the event of my death, I grant full guardianship of my children to my closest friend, Naomi Brooks, the only person I trust without question." Then Ethan placed a small USB on the table. "Before Marissa passed, she sent me a short video. I never meant to share it, but now it matters." He plugged it in. The screen lit up. Marissa's face appeared, tired but steady. "If I die, Naomi will be the children's mother. Not because I have no one else, but because she is their real family, the strongest woman I know." Silence filled the room. The CPS worker scanned the files again, then slowly closed the folder. After a moment, the lead representative looked at Naomi. Not with suspicion this time, but respect. "Ms. Brooks, we officially withdraw all claims. The investigation is closed." Naomi couldn't speak. Ethan gently touched her shoulder. Dorothy gave her hand a quiet squeeze. No words needed. Word of the hearing spread quickly through the neighborhood. Not everyone changed, but for the first time, Naomi walked the hallway without whispers. One neighbor nodded at her. An old woman left a small bag of cookies at her door. Small signs, but to Naomi, they were like the first rays of light after a long, dark storm. She hadn't needed to shout to defend the truth. She just needed to stand tall and let the truth speak for itself. The truth had come to light. Naomi no longer had to fight alone, nor prove herself to anyone. But in the quiet that followed, what moved her most wasn't vindication. It was Ethan's steady gaze, choosing to stay, not out of duty, but out of love. And in that moment, something Naomi had never dared to dream was slowly making its way into her life. That evening, Naomi had no idea what Ethan had planned. The small apartment felt strangely warm. Candles flickered across the dinner table, casting soft golden light over the chipped walls. A gentle aroma drifted from the spaghetti he'd cooked himself. Simple, honest. The kids whispered excitedly in the corner, while Ethan stood silently, hands behind his back. Naomi stepped in from the kitchen and froze. "What's going on?" she asked softly. Ethan approached, pulling out a small box. Inside, a modest ring sparkled, nothing extravagant, but it gleamed, like the look in his eyes. "This isn't because you saved me," he said. "It's not out of gratitude. It's because I love you. I love how you love those kids. I love your strength, your pride, your softness, and I want to be part of your family." Naomi stood still. 1,000 fears rushed in. Dependence, gossip, judgment. She had never needed saving. She'd spent her whole life surviving without leaning on anyone. Could she love someone without losing herself? Suddenly, the children ran up and wrapped their arms around Ethan's legs, eyes wide and glowing. "Naomi's Uncle Ethan, can you be our dad?" Naomi broke down in tears. And under the soft candlelight, she nodded. Not because she needed someone to save her, but because, for the first time, she had found someone willing to walk beside her, not to change her life, but to join her in it. The wedding didn't take place in a grand church or a fancy hall. It was held in the backyard of a small community center, the same one that had handed out hot soup and donated clothes during hurricane season. But today, where worry and tears once lingered, there was laughter, music, and soft light everywhere. Wooden tables were covered with simple white cloths. String lights hung between the trees. Wildflowers from a nearby park sat in repurposed glass jars. Neighbors, who once gossiped about Naomi, brought home cooked dishes, fruit platters, pies, even a wedding cake baked by a retired aunt who insisted it be a gift. This wasn't just a wedding the community attended. It was a wedding they became part of. Naomi stood before a small mirror inside a modest room in the back. Her ivory dress, rented and simple, hugged her figure perfectly. Her hair was loosely braided, pinned with a single pearl clip, Dorothy's wedding gift. Hope peeked in, eyes wide. She stared for a long moment, then whispered, "Mama, you look like a real princess." Naomi smiled, tears forming in her eyes. She knelt down and hugged her daughter close. "No, baby. I'm just your mom. But today, I feel like I'm dreaming." Outside, Ethan waited in a simple suit, holding a bouquet of hand-picked wildflowers. Elijah and Faith stood beside him, fixing his tie and dress hem. As Naomi stepped into the yard, the crowd rose. Applause followed, soft but full of warmth. Ethan looked at her like time itself had paused. Their vows weren't flowery, just eyes locked, fingers laced, promises spoken in silence. Just, I choose you back. And 3 small voices chiming in. And we choose both of you. That night, after the last dance and cake in their new apartment, not big, but finally a space where everyone had a bed, Naomi stood by the window, city lights casting a soft glow on her face. Ethan came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "Thank you for letting me love you," he whispered. Naomi turned, her hands resting on his chest, eyes glinting with something unspoken. "Ethan, yeah?" She took his hand and gently placed it over her stomach. A beat passed, then a shy smile. "I have good news." His eyes widened. Then a laugh escaped, a soft, disbelieving sound that filled the room with joy. He pulled her close, tighter than ever. Outside the window, the sky wasn't fully starry yet, but the first light had broken through the horizon. Naomi closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest. The storm had passed, and they had made it. Together. And as the morning sun poured through their window, wrapping them in gold and quiet promise, Naomi smiled through tears. "Whatever comes next," she whispered, "we'll face it together." Because this time, they weren't just surviving the storm, they were building a future beyond it.